Welcome to Cast of Creators. We're your hosts. I'm Nelson Thal.
And I'm Casie Stewart. We've spent our careers in media and publishing, and now we're setting the stage for creative people who inspire us to share their stories.
Our guest this episode is Shayne Stephens. Shayne is the private client director of Louis XIII Cognac, the world's most precious cognac.
And one of the most expensive. Shayne has a really interesting career story, from starting out as a writer in Winnipeg to working with Peter Nygård, then making the move to marketing luxury brands. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, let's go. Shayne, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful that you're here because when I was putting the space together with Casie, I think we turned to each other a bunch of times and we're like, oh, we're excited to show Shayne the space.
You did a great job. I'm impressed. I've been wondering where you've been hanging out, Nelson.
Yeah, we've been here.
Yeah, we've been here. And you know what? It's definitely an easy place to be. I come in here in the morning and just like start my normal workday and turn on all the lights and just sit here in my meetings. And it's just hilarious to be in the studio, like in your regular meetings.
Yeah, it's also a hop, skip, and a jump from where you live. So I'd say that's a pretty big benefit of this space.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't believe it. When we were looking for office space, I thought we'd end up downtown, or I thought we'd end up, uptown or wherever. I didn't imagine that we'd be able to even afford rent in Yorkville. Like you never really know, And we discovered this space, and our landlord is like right over there. We have a sublease here, and it was just perfect. And this used to be a pretty boring white conference room, but now it is anything but.
You got a green screen.
Yeah,
you got
Hover Studios
some blue
has
drapes.
beer.
You gotta like it.
We got our merch rack. We've got a stocked bar and snacks.
I love it. You offered me snacks over there. There's a whole corner of snacks. I love it.
Yeah, it's good.
So whenever I know I'm going to be seeing you, I think, wow, I wonder what Shayne is going to have on.
Oh, yeah.
And you come
I
up
do
with
that too. I'm like, oh, let me see your outfit.
You come up with some of the most creative things that I've ever seen anybody wear, and you find them, and it seems like you spec them out. So, like, even this shirt, like, what is this? Is this like a one-off, or is it a limit? Like, what is that?
Brand I've been looking at for a little bit called Warren Lotus, and he does these amazing graphics. And there was a couple that he put out. They were like cowboy skeletons, and I just thought it was cool. So I ordered them, and like I was saying before, I'm super, when I order something, I'm still like a kid in that regard. Like if someone sends me sneakers or something, I have to wear it that day.
Yeah.
Right? So I ordered these shirts and I was like, those shirts are awesome. And then, a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, 3. And now you get stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah, you can get Amazon same day.
Like same day, right?
You're like, where is my stuff?
It was like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I think, luckily I got busy for a bit of that, and it was like 6 weeks I sent an email saying, hey, did you guys forget? Like, I'm just following up, and they came back, and they were super friendly and nice about it, and they just sort of said, did you read the fine print? And I was like, no. Who reads the fine print anymore and ordering anything online? And it was like, 8 to 12 weeks, so I don't know what this dude does, if he's hand painting them in a back room somewhere, but it took a long time to get them. So now that they're here, I'm going to wear them.
And it arrived, and now you're here wearing it.
And he must start with just a faded shirt. So he does a fade base because we did our merch. So now I'm thinking like, oh, that's how would we do that? Okay, so it would be like a faded base, and then he must be using one of those big
screen printing
on that thing.
Yeah,
cool.
Because it's really like it's a pretty significant texture. So he lathered it on.
Yeah.
Good luck in the wash with that thing. I wonder how long that'll...
I'm a little nervous about that.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm not gonna lie. They're going to get washed individually, these shirts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
On one of those delicate things like the washboard.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably what I should do. But they're oversized, so I'm going to throw in the dryer and hope it shrinks up a little bit.
So you came with a motorcycle helmet. I'm assuming you didn't drive a car with that on.
I didn't. Traffic in the city drives me mental, and the motorcycle is not only fun. I've been doing it for years, and it's just such a great way to get around town. It's quick. I take bike lanes. I can split cars if it's busy. Great.
When did you start riding?
I guess when I was I want to say 19 years old. Probably about 19. I came back from hockey, playing hockey, and
where?
I grew up in Winnipeg, and I had moved away from Winnipeg to play hockey here in Ontario.
Wow.
I kind of been all over. I'd played in Saskatchewan, and I'd played in like rural Manitoba, and then I came out here and I played.
When you were in your teens.
Yeah, when I was young. When
you must have been a quick little hockey player.
I was little and fast, but
yeah,
it didn't help me not get concussions. That's for sure.
Wow.
Now that I look at it, but and so when I quit hockey, kind of just aimless kid, was working at a coffee shop, and there was this guy kept riding this like super loud Virago bike, and I just thought it was cool. I'd always wanted to ride a motorcycle and whatnot, and he came in and got coffee, and we got to know each other, and he said, I got a motorcycle in the back like of my stepdad's house. It's super cool. So he brought me over there to look at it one day, and I bought it. I always laughing with my dad because I had it like put in the back of a pickup truck and dropped off at my parents' house, and my dad came home and was like, what is that? And I was like, that's my new motorcycle, right? He's like, you don't know how to ride. But back then you could do a 15-minute test. It cost $15. And it was a handwritten test. You get your beginners, and in Winnipeg you only have like a 3-month riding season.
It was a license you could just ride for like it was like you could ride for the
3
summer,
months, and
then that's all you needed.
Yeah, so you had 3 months. So all of us really not smart kids would get our beginners because we didn't want to pay the $60 or spend the time doing the real test. And we would just do this $15 15-minute test, get our beginners and ride. And it was like the stipulations where you weren't allowed to ride with anyone on the back, but we all did, but it was so I've been riding for quite a while now, but it's mostly just the last like 4 or 5 years I gotten back into it. So, but it's just it's so fun. It's so peaceful. It's like adrenaline meets calm in a weird way. And when I just want to get out of the house, I can go for a rip. I did last night, ripping up and down Don Valley late in the evening when there's no cars. Like,
yeah, that's fun.
It's pretty fun. So, but it's really great during the daytime when the city's busy because I can be home as quick as if there was no one on the road on the bike, which is awesome, and parking's free, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I remember the first time I went to London, it was the first time I really saw a city where you're allowed to go up the line on the bike, totally. Like in between the cars. Yeah. And it really clicked there why someone would ride a motorcycle because I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like, look at how much faster these, but a lot of trust in the cars not to change lanes. It's crazy over there with the motorcycles.
For sure.
Never seen anything
Paris
like
is like that too. It's just
Paris is like that too.
It's crazy. Even I, like when I was in Paris and have been in Paris, I'm always blown away at how those guys are riding. I mean, I think it should be the way it is here. Mm-hmm. Because the cars are also used to it, so everybody kind of knows where it's going to be. But, I mean, those guys ride in clusters of, like, 15 people, like tire to tire between cars. Like, it's pretty intense how they do it, but we're not there yet.
And then they have cars have the right of way. When you're crossing the street as a pedestrian in London, you don't have the right of way at all. Yeah. Like that car has the right of way. I've never actually driven a car.
It's like Montreal. Montrealers all the drivers in Montreal just think they got the right of way.
Right. Yeah. But I've never driven there, but I'd love to drive there because here in Toronto, you're like a second-class citizen as a car. Right. Like you've got basically pedestrians and bike lane, then like the cars are like the lowest on the totem pole. Yeah. In the UK, it's completely flipped. I've never gotten the experience of being, an in-car first-class citizen.
Well, time for you to drive there.
I gotta head over there.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
So, snowmobiling too in Winnipeg? What other stuff you get into?
No, oddly enough. I mean, the only snowmobiling I've been fortunate enough to do has been in Whistler.
Awesome.
For a couple like staff parties when I lived out there.
You must have loved that.
Oh my God, yeah. So fun. So it's always made me someone that really wants to snowmobile, but it's, I live downtown, front Spadina area. Like, it's not
you're
super,
not going to
you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where if I had a cottage or something, I would absolutely do it because it was so fun.
Oh, yeah. You used to have, like, even if you drive like an hour and a half north here, there's no real snowmobiling anymore. Right. Like the weather has changed so much that if you buy, like sometimes I'll see people buy like brand new snowmobiles and they're like, an hour and a half north of here. And it's like, what are you nuts? Like this thing's like 15, 16 grand. And what snowmobiling you think you're going to be doing here? Like on a couple weekends? Like where are you going to trailer this thing or what are you doing? But snowmobiling is fantastic. Does Sean have a snowmobile up in Muskoka?
No, not yet, but he would really like to have one because he grew up in Deep River, Ontario.
Okay.
So like he's
yes.
Sounds like a snowboard
He's
place.
really like
Snowmobile
Northern
place.
Ontario.
Yeah.
Like he likes to really anything that goes brap brap makes
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
noise. That's
Oh, yeah.
like what he's
Yeah.
into, you know.
Love
He
it.
likes to rip it on the snowmobile. That's what we had. Went snowmobiling at Nelson's cottage, and like right across the lake, snowmobile to breakfast, like
so
so
awesome.
fun.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Some years Lake Simcoe completely freezes, where they've got
really?
tons of ice huts, and
Really?
it's
Yeah.
unbelievable because depending on the fall, if it's really windy at the beginning of winter, it'll be bumpy. But some winters it freezes like glass, and then it's just like this never-ending meadow of powder out there.
Yeah.
And it's an incredibly it's a very unique feeling, when you go out there just by yourself. You've got so much freedom. You don't have to really deal with much of anything, and it's quite something. But
That same kind of calm that you talk
that
about,
same
like
kind of
being on a
calm.
bike.
Yeah, I love just driving anything. My thing is I want to drive everything.
Yeah.
So like I cars, like I just want to test drive everything. Motorcycles, anything. Like I always kind of keep my eye on what's going on, and like I've kind of already rotated through motorcycles because I just want to try the next thing. And it's not like a discontent thing. I'm always super thankful.
No, it's
and
a
blessed to have
curiosity
it.
thing.
It's just a curiosity thing. And I'll watch you on the boat or you snowmobiling. I'm like, fuck, that looks awesome because I'm still like just a little boy at heart, right?
Totally.
I want to drive all the cars, motorcycles, and
Casey's been known to hop on the back of a bike
I have.
every now and then.
Yeah,
has been known to.
I do like to go for a motorcycle ride. I mean,
We were at Collision, wandering around there, and I think you bumped into somebody. Oh, you bumped into Corey, and one of the first things that you brought up was like, remember I used to hop on the bike.
That's awesome.
yeah. I mean, it's fun.
I find for me, like I've been on the back of a wave rider with someone. I've been on the back with someone. I can't handle it. I don't like being on the back of it at all.
Me neither.
But it's different. I'm also like 5'2" and a small person,
Yeah.
so I just
what?
hold on.
That
and I'm
does
like,
make a difference
because
I
you're
always
like
feel
6
like
feet
I'm going to
tall.
be like the thing that the
Yeah.
pendulum at the back that they can't handle, like the engine in a Porsche. I'm
Yeah.
the engine in a Porsche. You know what I mean? Like that they can't manage.
There's something weird about people in the back. I'm not gonna lie. I bought a bike that doesn't have a second seat.
Yeah.
So I bought a bobber, and part of that was on
Purposely.
purpose.
Yeah, you're like,
Because
no.
everybody's always like, "Oh, I'd love to come for a ride," or like, "Let's go," and it's just awkward. It is like anytime. I had my Ducati was super fun. I loved it. I could have people on it, but I would just do my best to not have anyone on it because they don't lean properly.
Yeah.
The weight shifts.
It's
just awkward.
It's awkward. Look, if it's awkward on a Sea-Doo, then it's awkward on a bike. I've never driven on a bike with somebody on the back.
Yeah.
So Winnipeg got into hockey, into bikes, and then how did the artist in you start to emerge? How did the marketer start to emerge?
Oh man, that's a long ass story.
That's why it's a long form podcast because the good stories are the long ones. So feel free.
Few hours. No,
Feel free.
Where do I pick that up?
It's like, were you always like, creative, express yourself through fashion and like in brand marketing? No.
I
don't know.
I think growing up, if I look back on it, because I hear that type of question as it pertains to fashion a lot, and I can remember like a few items, right? I can remember like a pair of like orange and white Converse Weapons sneakers. I can remember a pink leather tie. I can remember like there's these pieces that I remember that were things that I liked that not everybody was wearing and whatnot. So there was a little bit of a desire to kind of not stand out, but just pieces that I liked, I would wear. Mm-hmm. But I think and I sort of try and break it into like 3 areas. Like in the beginning, it was like I wore stuff that was really a part of align me with like a tribe, right? So it was like in school it was like Roots and Beaver Canoe and all these things were like that was what the cool kids wore. So you'd always go home and like, Mom, can I get a, the beginning of school year, right? Like, what was it? They were going to buy you the 2 outfits or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was always like, you had it pretty dialed in.
You
as
knew
to
what you wanted.
What you wanted, right? So that was kind of phase 1 with the fashion stuff. And then phase 2 was wanting to stand out, right? So then it became more a matter of like, we were like in Winnipeg as I got a little older, we were kind of like rockabillys. We rode old Triumph motorcycles and we had greaser hair and got tattoos before anyone even had tattoos and stuff. And it was kind of a look. And that was really about like, want to stand out, want to be tough, want to be right. We always, we had to work out. We had to be strong, like this kind of stuff, right? Very toxic actually when I look at it. But then, and then eventually I think you get to a point where you, like this guy that I used to work for always said it best. He's like, when you turn 40, you stop believing your own bullshit. And it was such a great line, and I laughed at it because I was like 25 when he said it. I was like, this guy, what he's talking
what
about?
does this guy
But now
know?
I get it, right? And I think now I see things that I like, and I buy them and wear them, like, period. And I put stuff together, and everybody has their own unique way of doing things, and I just have mine. And but like as a kid, I don't know if there was never like I'm standing on the sofa performing in like a cape or anything. Like fashion was like you, right? But clearly I did like it. And I remember when I was in like that middle area, like I remember reading GQ, for example, and like, being one of the only people that I knew that read GQ, but like following it and really like telling people I'm going to be the editor of GQ one day, right? So it became more and more important to me, and now I love it. But equally, like COVID was a weird break from it all. So now when I'm thinking about going to an event or something, like it's actually become daunting. I'm like what am I going to wear? And I'm looking in this closet, and it's just all stressing me out now more than anything. Because for COVID, I just wore like the most whatever, like there was no I went for walks in the morning and I had like cords in the winter and like shorts in the summer, right? I'd rotate through sneakers, but that's about it, right? So so as a kid, like it was something I think that like allowed me to fit in for a while and then allowed me to stand out, and now it's just sort of I'm kind of like in a bit of a comfort zone with it, and I just do what I want.
That's good.
Tuck your jersey in playing hockey, or did you leave it untucked? Tucked it in?
Yeah, I did one side.
Tucked it in? One side? Okay.
One side, yeah.
All right, that's what I was picturing. Yeah, I don't know why. The one side. Yeah, I was picturing you with the one side tuck.
I'm not a big guy, so a lot of it was that.
Yeah, it'd be too low.
The sweater was like long,
oversized.
Yeah. It wasn't. That wasn't cool back then. So honestly, like the tuck was. A lot of times, I think I would actually tuck the whole thing in because it was that long that it wasn't comfortable, and I thought it looked ridiculous, right? So yeah, for sure the tuck probably good when guys were beating me around the ice and not have more to grab onto. So
did you watch the Stanley Cup Finals?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to see Colorado win.
It really was. I'm not a fan when guys win, like, or when teams go on like 2-3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like that's great that Tampa won too, but I was really happy that I love Makar and I love McKinnon. Like great players, both super deserving, and that organization seems super classy to me. And
for
my Winnipeg Jets sucked this year, so if there was going to be a team to make it, I would have liked to see a Canadian team. But like for how it ended up, like I'm super thrilled that the Avalanche won. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, Joe Sakic seems like a classy guy.
Super classy guy.
Yeah, even when he was a player too.
Totally.
His whole career. I loved watching him win it.
Yeah.
And I forget what year, maybe 99, 2001 in there was really cool with Patrick Waugh. That was I remember that. I was like right at the right age. Like there's
those guys are like so opposite.
There's a certain
Joe
age.
Sakic and Patrick Waugh.
Yeah,
Patrick
definitely.
Waugh is just a nightmare seeming guy, and Joe Sakic, you're right. He seems like just the classiest, quiet, was that way in hockey, but just an intense player, but a really like respectful guy.
Oh yeah, it's like Joe Sakic's over here, then Waugh's son.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, that was great. And how many siblings do you have?
I've got a brother who is 7 years younger than me, and a sister that is 3 years younger than me.
Oh wow! So you remember your brother coming home from the hospital?
Well, not particularly.
I always think of that
I've seen the pictures of him.
I always think of that because I have now a 6-month-old,
I
as
know.
you know, and I think, it would be like my brother and I are really close, so I never saw a baby come home. He sort of did, but he was pretty young, 18 months older than me.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, it must be kind of interesting to see.
I did.
Yeah,
my
you
sister's
did.
4 years younger, and her name's Jennifer, and I was like, I picked the name for the baby. She's pissed at that because she's like, every kid in her class. Well, I mean, in her class, there was always like 5 Jennies, and I was Casie, and there's always only like one or maybe one boy. So she's sorry, Jenny, love you.
You should tell her, just be thankful I didn't pick Karen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
Could have been Karen, Jenny.
But I remember her coming home from the hospital, and like I have a picture of it in my room. But I remember that day that I met her. Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. No, I don't remember that, but I mean, yeah, they're cool. It's funny, the last year we've all really kind of come together. I mean, they live in Winnipeg. But my brother and my father came out to visit not too long ago, which was super cool. And it's weird because I grew up going to church. My dad was like the chair of the Baptist General Conference and a deacon at the church and all that stuff. So it was a pretty major part of my growing up. And my brother's now the teaching pastor at the church I grew up at.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's super weird that like to go back, and then I go back to the same church with family, and now my brother's on stage and is the one preaching.
Wow, I bet that is.
It's kind of crazy. So
it's like Talia's family. Her family grew up pretty orthodox, and they were kosher. Her grandparents were kosher, and her dad, who is like not kosher, okay, like he eats everything, and but he still sort of runs this shul in North Bay a little bit. So she goes up there on the holidays every now and then, and he's speaking just like that.
Yeah.
And he was the officiant at our wedding.
Oh, really?
He can, I don't know what it's called, but he can marry people, and he's been doing that for years. And it's very strange where all of a sudden you go, all of a sudden, your dad's up there, your brother's up there. It's just such a mind,
Yeah, I had that. Something popped up on, when like whoever, one of the social media platforms or your Apple phone sends you photos.
Yeah, like a memory or on this day or something.
And it was like my brother and my dad on stage at the church during the Father's Day, and they were doing they were tag teaming a part of it or whatever. Yeah, so
it's interesting as you progress through life, you watch people sort of come into their own. And when you're young, everybody you see or know that says they're going to be something one day. Yeah. You've never experienced, because you haven't lived long enough, that person actually ending up being that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as you get older, you're like, oh wow, he had the confidence. He said he was going to do that. He actually, look at this. He's actually done it. It's quite nice to see as you age, because at the beginning you're just seeing a lot of talk. With people.
That, or it's just you see people come into their own that stumble into it too. Yeah. Right? I kind of feel like my brother always knew that he was going to go in that direction. And so he was one that was kind of like, he knew it and he got there. And my sister, she's come at it in a different way, and she's really kind of fallen into some cool stuff lately. So it's interesting to watch, especially when you talk siblings, the individual relationship you have with siblings, that's always kind of complicated, but it's also like you're always rooting for them. You want the best for them, kind of thing. So you do pay attention and you watch and try and help where you can. But my brother just really he was the guy that talked about it and just went and kind of did it, head down, no stopping. And then my sister, she's very much an artist, so she's a musician. But she's always had these great kind of marketing ideas and stuff like that. And so we'd always kind of have these conversations as I was in marketing. And more recently, she's kind of really been able to pull off some cool stuff. So it's fun to watch even the people that aren't, I'm going to do this, they do somehow get there. And it's kind of fun to watch that stumbling process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And did your parents grow up in Winnipeg?
Yeah. Well, my mom grew up in Portage la Prairie, which is just outside of Winnipeg, and my dad grew up in Winnipeg. So,
are they first generation Winnipeg, or their parents?
Well, their parents were.
Did their parents grow up in Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
cool.
We're you're Canadian,
Yeah.
It would have been
the same.
2 or 3 generations would have been
cool.
Came over, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was on my dad's side. We've been in Toronto for years and years and years. But my mom's side, they all came from Italy. My mom's parents' generation, basically, are the first generation here from Italy.
Yeah. Oh, I'm first generation Canadian. My family's from New Zealand.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, both my parents moved here in the 70s, late 70s, before we were born. Yeah. Dual citizenship, 2 passports. Yeah.
You were
Pretty good
born
place to have.
in Cambridge?
I was born in Cambridge, Ontario. Yes. No, I was actually born in Bramley Hospital, but I never lived there. I grew up in Cambridge.
Well, they just say you're from Brampton then.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what to pick, okay, but I did. I moved to Australia eventually, you know? So,
Yeah, you moved to Australia.
yeah.
What age?
I moved there at 21. But I mean, I had been back and forth to New Zealand like throughout my life, and my entire family, except my mom, my dad, and my sister, all live there. Like, I have no family here. I've never had any family here. I've had 2 family Christmases in my entire life, like with my family. So, like, people talking about family and like they're having like generational family in Canada. I'm like, oh, that sounds so nice. Because like, I went back in 2018. I took my mom for a month to visit my grandma, my Nana, before she passed away. And like, I got to see all my family, and it was around Christmas time, and I had New Year's with them. And like, I'd never had that before. My cousins are like my
so
age,
nice.
and gosh, it's fun. But then it's also like, family can be dramatic. There was some drama, and I was like, maybe living in Canada is not the worst. I was like, gotta go, guys. Whoop, whoop, on my plane.
In doses.
And I was like, oh, cool, have fun dealing with that shitstorm.
Yeah. Well, you know,
that's funny.
Australia's far enough that you know you're not going to get a pop in.
Yeah, well,
Good point.
when I lived there, it was really cool because it's about like the flight from here to LA. It's just not like super close, but I had
What
cousins
is like the flight from here to
like
LA?
from like New
Here to
Zealand.
Oh,
Yeah, New Zealand to Australia.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
okay.
right.
Yeah, to like, but I
thought
did
you
have
meant
when I lived there. I was at university, and I had cousins that lived there. So all the other Canadian students would get homesick, and I was like, later, going to visit my cousins for like Easter weekend or something.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, it was fun.
Have you been to Australia?
No, I have not.
Yeah, neither have I.
It's
I
fun
have a lot
there.
of friends that love it, and when I lived in Whistler, the whole place was full
Yeah,
of Australians.
it's like
So I have a lot of friends that live there.
Yeah,
A lot
there's
of
so many
Australians.
there.
Yeah.
Because they all like when you're over there, like in New Zealand especially, you graduate your school at like 18, and because you're so far away from everything, like I don't think I could live there because I thought about living in Australia, but it's like you're so far away from everything that I knew. But basically, everyone goes and travels like as soon as you're done high school and stuff.
You go and travel and drink.
Yeah, drink and talk really loudly.
Just party.
Well, it's a lot easier now wrapping my head around going there with internet and like an iPad on the plane.
Yeah,
Like going there like even 15
It's a-
years ago
It's
is really
it's a
a lot.
long
You got to
flight.
grab a
TV screen is
book.
all tiny and
Yeah, get a book.
I mean, I've never known anything different because I first went when I was like 2. So, I mean, I was 2.
Yeah, you said that you slipped into a bit of an accent on the 2, just
there we
talking
go.
about it. No, I know.
It
Casey's
happens
got
sometimes. It's like, or also
Very rarely.
Very
though,
rarely.
Very rarely.
If I get on the phone and I ring mom, it's like it comes out. Because I had an accent when I first went to school.
Oh.
Because my parents only really knew people from Australia or New Zealand, and you just stick with people that and I got made fun of when I went to school, so I stopped talking like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nothing like
now it's a party trick.
nothing
Yeah,
like
no, that's when it comes out.
Exactly.
yeah, nothing like other kids to wipe off an accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, you talk funny. No, you talk funny. Like I just stopped. Yeah.
And then so when you realized that hockey wasn't going to be, your path,
Yeah.
what then did you shift into next?
Um.
Because this would have been in Ontario at that point.
Yeah. So when I got back to Winnipeg after kind of hockey was done, I was pretty like I put a lot of eggs in one basket, and you don't even realize it, right? So I just kind of played hockey, and that's what I like to do, and was relatively okay at it. And when that was kind of done, you're 20 years old, and you haven't like I didn't like school at all. I didn't do well in school. So I hadn't thought anything beyond that. It was just kind of it was almost like year to year, season to season, where was I going to play hockey? And then,
Right.
Yeah.
So I kind of found myself back in Winnipeg, little lost, little holy, like what's
Yeah, like, what do
my
I
life
do
gonna
now?
look like? Yeah, exactly. And so I was I was working at this coffee shop, and the coffee shop job turned into a bar backing job, and that bar backing job turned into like a bartending job, and that bartending job ended up at bartending jobs all over the city. And
so you know the inner workings of a bar.
Oh yeah, very well,
very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that kind of that ended up turning into a friend of mine and I hitchhiking to Whistler, which was kind of fun. It was like when you look back on those moments in your life that were like super fun, and you're like, wow, he's still one of my best buddies, and we talk all the time. Lives in Toronto, and we ride together and stuff. Like we'll always laugh and be like, man, like remember that time? Like we have those like, nostalgic, yeah.
I can never imagine.
So we
doing
went
that.
out there. He felt like we were actually going to go to LA because we were going to ride our motorcycles to LA. He was going to be a stuntman. I was going to like try acting, and that was just not that I ever want to be an actor. We were just like, what else do you do in LA?
Yeah,
Right.
And it was like Winnipeg was very naive. So because we were these charismatic guys, there was like everybody had all the faith in the world, so they would like cheer us on and every night and celebrate that we were going to go and like
you're going to
become
buddy.
celebrities and stuff. And one night, him and I, we left a nightclub, and he was a gymnast, so he's like incredibly strong, and so he was like, hey, like I think he dared me to do a handstand on a fence or something like that, so I did it, but where we did it at the same time, and he shook me off of it or something like that. Anyway, I fell, stood up laughing. My foot was pointing backwards.
Oh, my God.
So I went right to the hospital. And
is this in Winnipeg? Where's
in
this?
Winnipeg,
This
yeah.
is in Winnipeg.
Yeah,
Okay.
so basically now I'm in a cast. We're not going to LA, right? Now it's like the cast
the
comes
dream
off.
is over.
So you
Cast
became
comes-
the stuntman.
Yeah,
You
cast,
flipped.
yeah, exactly. Cast comes off in October. Too late to ride the motorcycles, right? So the whole thing. But he's fallen in love with this girl.
Okay.
Who now lives in Whistler. So now things change, right? So we're going to like
You pivot.
hitchhike to Whistler. We're going to go surprise her for Halloween. So it takes us like 3 weeks to get out there. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
We party every city we go to. It's hilarious. Super fun time. And then so out there.
Awesome years for that, too.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
20, 21 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we'd been getting in some trouble back home. So like the timing was really good to get out of Winnipeg. And so like, while I was out there, once again, bartending, which was great, met all these people. And eventually
Was it already Intra-West at that point,
it had
Whistler?
just become Intra-West.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was 90 just fucking dating myself here, 97.
Okay.
Right? So, and then...
Intra-West, a company bought the whole place,
Yeah.
basically. And it went from, evolved from sort of like a sporadic, place to something that was more of a coordinated effort.
Yeah,
a little
totally.
bit more like Smart Center vibes.
Yeah.
A little bit like, that lodge
Like a
kind of looks
plaza.
like, is that
Very
the same
true.
construction company as that lodge,
very true.
Yeah.
I was just out there and it's like built up so much, so much since then. It's crazy. But yeah, so that was kind of like, so just bartending, hospitality industry.
Snowboarding? Skiing?
Snowboarding.
Snowboarding.
But not like great at it,
Yeah.
right? Just something that was kind of,
Yeah.
we rolled in hitchhiking and we looked like
Hitchhikers?
IRA, like little nightmare guys, right? Because we were like rockabillies and wound up in Whistler Village with like biker jackets and like denim and stuff, and everybody was wearing snowboard gear, right?
Wow,
so
right.
People were just like, who are these guys? Anyway, I worked there for a while, and then I kind of decided that was
What's
not
a
the
while?
place for me.
What's a while?
About a year and a half. I was like, this isn't the place for me, really. So I moved down to Vancouver and got a job at this great little restaurant there and was like going up and doing the clubs on the weekends in Whistler and then my weeks there. And I was actually getting like acting auditions, like hilarious.
Wow.
Just randomly came to pass that a bouncer's girlfriend ran this thing and saw me and was like, you'd be... And back then I was like, I didn't shave. I was like in good shape. I had tattoos. No one had tattoos. The snowboarder was like the cool guy. So I was getting all these auditions.
It was a unique look.
It was, yeah. And
you looked like one of the characters in a snowboard game. Like when you're going through the
even though I was a
characters,
brutal
like that's
snowboarder.
the, yeah. That's the mustache
funny.
tattooed character.
Yeah. So I just ended up, I ran into a couple of friends that were from Winnipeg. They lived in Richmond. One guy was taking journalism school at Kwantlen College, and I remember him always coming home being like, I love journalism, so fun, photojournalism, this, that, the other. And I was like, how is this guy so happy going to school? Yeah. And so I kind of, we had
He's a nut.
Yeah, I thought he was crazy, but he's the greatest guy, right?
Yeah.
And so one night we had some drinks, and I'd always kind of kept a journal, and we he read some of the stuff. He's like, you know what, you're not a bad writer. Pocketed that.
Yeah.
I flew back to Winnipeg to buy a motorcycle. I was going to ride it back out to Vancouver, and my dad kind of cornered me and was like, you know what, I don't know, you're 22 years old now. Is this acting thing for real? Maybe you should go to school, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I stayed there, but the first thing I did was walked into basically the Now magazine in Winnipeg, and ended up knowing the editor from like high school or something, and being like, I want to write. And she's like, oh my God, man. Like, if I had a dime for everybody that came through the door and said that, she's like, take these CDs, review them, CDs.
Yeah.
Take them, review them. If they're good, I'll print it. If it sucks, hey, don't worry about it, right?
Wow, cool.
And guys, I'm not joking. Like, I think this is so funny. I remember in the basement at my parents' house on the computer writing these like reviews and counting on the screen because I didn't know there was a word count.
Yeah, counting on the screen the words.
Because she was like, make sure this doesn't go over like 200 words or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So they printed it, and that's
oh, they printed it.
Yeah, they printed it.
So did you printed it out? But like how'd you bring it to her? You printed it and brought it to her?
Because the email was like brand new, right? So I had to bring it to her on disc.
On a disc?
Yeah, so I brought it to her on disc. She printed it, so it went to print. So I was now like a published writer. And
cool.
Within 2 weeks, she was like, a writer couldn't do this event. So I went and like covered Cannibal Corpse, was like this first, like it was a death metal band.
Yeah.
She put me on the hip hop beat. So I wrote music for like a good 3-4 years.
That's
which
so
was super cool. And I didn't realize Winnipeg was like a trade publishing hub. So
Were they paying you per story, or did you become an employee?
The stories I got paid for. I don't think the CDs I got paid for. I think that was like, you got to keep the CDs. So when CDs came in, you all rushed down there to get the ones you wanted, and then you'd review them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which isn't very objective either, right? When you think about
that's
it,
interesting. Okay, so CDs would come into Now.
So she'd be like, hey, a bunch
and
of
they
CDs
just
came in.
basically a bunch of CDs came in and toss you like 6
So you'd
of
rip
them.
down there, and because you'd want it to, right, anyway. So but Winnipeg was like this trade publication hub. So all of a sudden I was getting phone calls through connections saying like, hey, you're doing some writing. I read your article here. Would you come and write this article for us? And it was like, but those were paying like 30 cents a word. So I was all of a sudden collecting a check from, it was boring as hell. Like it was like private trucking and like all these weird random things, but it was like make a phone call, get some quotes, string some stuff together, bang, 30 cents a word. Perfect, right? So I was in school. My dad convinced me to take some schools. I was like in English and professional style and editing because I said, maybe that'd be interesting. I quit. Like I was like maybe 6 months in. I'm like, I'm out because like I'm getting paid way too good here.
Yeah.
And I went in one day because the email was down, and I brought some articles on disc, and a guy behind the guy that said you stop believing your bullshit at 40, he was looking like he was having like a stroke because it was so busy. And I walked in to hand this in. He goes, hey, you're the bartender from Bar Italia. And I was like, yeah, man. And I pretend I know. I'm like, oh, how's it going, man? Right? Like,
Yeah.
He was like, we're screwed. Like, we're out of editors quit in Toronto, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, that's crazy. He's like, hey, would you like to be an editor? And I was like, yep.
Wow.
So I took this editing
It's
job.
like you manifested the
dude,
GQ
he walked me
dream.
down to this room, this office, and the woman that was there was this woman named Nancy, and she had this interview with me, gave me the job, and within 3 months, I was on a plane to Toronto to come out here because the Canadian office was closed, like had been like impacted by all these editors quitting. So I ended up coming out here for the first time that way, and I was editing and writing for quite a few years, and then my grandmother got sick, and I moved back to Winnipeg, and it was there that I kind of started to get into marketing because I ended up when I went back to Winnipeg, just ended up bartending, and you know you're back in the city. I've seen Vancouver now. I've seen Toronto. Yeah. And when, my grandmother had passed, my sister had her son, like my godson. So I was kind of like, what am I doing here? It's been like 4 years. I'm just wasting time. So I moved back to Toronto. But before I did, I got an ex-girlfriend had a client, and he was a super good guy. And he's like, hey, you know how to bartend? Come down to Peter Nygård's like island in the Bahamas. And he's like, I throw Peter's like whatever, like parties.
My God,
right? I was
really?
I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm coming down. So we did this thing, this party, and it was a complete and absolute gong show. It was the worst experience of my life. Like funny, it's super funny, and I will preface that by saying I did not witness any of the stuff.
No, I figured
I
not.
did witness what very much looked to me like pay for play.
Okay.
And that both sides were benefiting from a relationship.
Right.
Financially.
Right.
That's called a party in the Bahamas.
Exactly. Right? But I didn't. Yeah. But I wasn't privy to anything that was like nefarious. So.
Right.
But it was more that he was like a nightmare, right? So he just was like he wanted people like, so the day before the people, this event was for volleyball players. Because he had made these unbelievable beach volleyball. He loved beach volleyball, so he did these amazing courts.
Yeah.
And he flew in the top beach volleyball players in the world. So we're talking the men's gold medal U.S. Olympic team.
Right. Like
the super uber hot Brazilian.
Yeah, the top people.
Top girls. Like,
wow.
So all these people fly
like the
in
field
there.
of dreams. You build that they will come. Like, volleyball courts. You got to make an out.
But he does it, and then he forces himself. Like, so he chooses the better of the guys on the gold medal team, and he becomes that guy's partner. So he basically brings all these people in to just play volleyball with the best in the world because he has the money to do it.
Yeah,
and it just ends up being a total gong show. And he wants like music to play that when the sun crests on the horizon, the crash of the like it's a
particular's an understatement.
It's the most insane stuff I've ever seen. Anyway,
I bet.
Wow.
Yeah. But through that, I met Tina, who was the then director of marketing for the company, and she knew, and we got to know each other. And I was like, I'm never going to work here, and she was like, I moved to Toronto, and then she was bugging me like, hey, come work for me. Listen, you won't have to deal with him. Blah blah blah. And the opportunity was great. She's like, I'll teach you marketing. You can come in. I want you to try, do what you want. We want some fresh new ideas and faces in here. And so she hired me, and I ended up spending like probably 7 years there, but in a marketing function.
Wow, because a lot of, most of your function as a marketing head or whatever there in those years would be copy. Copy is a huge component because it's all print. At that point, most of it's print.
Yeah, well,
so are you transitioning to digital? Like what was that 7 years
Nygård
like?
of all places had transitioned to they had a .com before almost anybody else.
Okay,
right.
Like,
so they had
really were advanced that way. And the one thing that Tina was unbelievable at was that she was doing collaborations and partnerships before anyone else I knew of. There was a long time that brands refused to partner.
Right.
They didn't want to share their databases.
Right.
Because they guarded them. Right. They didn't need access to new. I wouldn't say they don't need new clientele, but there was a little bit more out there, right?
Right.
Whereas Tina was like doing collaborations with Nygård and like Nokia and doing this crazy stuff. So I was fascinated by the way that she was doing business, and for me, from a marketing perspective, that like you couldn't get any farther from like my love than Nygård.
Right.
Like it's like stretch pants for 80-year-old women.
Yes.
Right?
Like their product line is mostly like hosiery. It's basically a hosiery
no, it's
business?
everything. It's like it's everything, but it was like the plus size and plus in age. So it was women's wear, and I would say predominantly like 50 to 60 plus.
Okay.
So from a marketing perspective, it was amazing because I wasn't able to ever inject what I thought was cool.
Right.
I had to understand the demographic and what the demographic wanted and what would be relevant to the demographic. And it kind of beat into my head something that most kids in marketing don't understand today because they just try and force their ideas, what they think is cool through. It may make no sense to the demo.
Right.
So I learned that way, and I learned from someone who is, I think, still one of the best marketers ever. I wish he had left Nygård well before she did, because she was just absolutely brilliant, and she kind of handed me the keys, and I got to do some really cool stuff digitally. Started the social components of it, all the partnerships. I got to do eventing, so all like the bones of what I took and then took with me to like Holtz and then to Saks. And then even now, I guess, even to what I do now, really came from that time at Nygård. I really owe that company a lot. It's gross and sad what happened. He's a despicable man. I hope he goes to jail in the Bahamas. Like,
right.
But the truth is,
didn't change your mission.
No,
like your mission was,
But I do owe that company a lot for taking a kid that dropped out of school, was writing, got bored with writing and editing, and gave me a chance. And like, I've been able to do some
like
fantastic
360
stuff.
marketing. It sounded like you
did all the things.
All the things.
Yeah, totally. So I always sort of talk highly of my experience there, because my experience there really has been hugely beneficial to my life and my career. And I met some great people there. There were really unbelievable people there. It's just that the man at the top was a monster.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and they had been around. He must have been around for years before that, and that company was making a lot of money all through those years.
Yeah, huge.
So
Dillard's
he was
account,
able to get great people.
Oh yeah, Bay, Sears, Dillard's. He had everything locked down. But the truth is, and I'll say this here because I think it's important. Every decision that I saw Peter Nygård make was a disaster.
Right.
Was a disaster.
No,
it really was a disaster.
Yeah.
He was good at pushing. Where Peter Nygård was smart is that he was able to find talent.
Yes.
And so Peter Nygård picked a guy named Rick Wenzel, and he picked a guy named Jim Bennett and Tina Tulikorpi. And that group built the company while he built his island in the Bahamas. And
all kinds
Peter
of
Nygård
things.
is an interesting story to me because Peter Nygård was social media before social media existed.
Yeah.
He built a persona that was bullshit.
He built it. Right.
He wasn't a designer. They built the systems that went, that blue sweater sold the best. We're going to do that again next year, and we're going to do one in green and whatever. He was more like, it was more statistics. Right? But he played himself off to be this big designer, and he'd always have the girls with him and this, that, like, it was as social media as you could get before it happened. Before social media happened.
Into a character.
He really did, right? And it was ultimately the demise of the company, right? But what's interesting is that he's a guy that does or did what I see so many people on social media doing is claiming to be things that they're not truly. Fake it till you make it. He made it, and then look what happened, right? And we're really so quick to jump all over like a person like that, but that power and success will get to you, and you're going to go after your worst desires, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it'll catch up. It'll catch up with you. Yeah.
If you think of, especially in the world of designers, most extremely successful designers do create a character of themselves. Like Karl Lagerfeld, like, anybody that you look at, really, there's a very distinct character that they've built, and they've really ran with consistently. They definitely changed through the years, but very often you think of the most famous designers and the most famous artists, like Warhol. Like, I watched Warhol's documentary. He thought he studied and thought a lot about, almost incessantly, about the character he wanted to be. And there's a certain, there's something to be said about that. Like, if you're an artist and, if you keep bumping into somebody and they're sort of like drastically different, or their hair is different, or they haven't really found that character that they want to promote in and of themselves.
Or their personal brand.
Their personal brand isn't
like,
dialed right in.
Like,
I think that you'd find that it's harder to become extremely successful.
Yeah.
Because there's, you need some consistency there to establish yourself.
Yeah.
I think so. I definitely, if I was, trying to be a famous artist or trying to be a famous designer, I would definitely study that, because I think it's
I
a
did
critical
that
trait.
trying to be a famous blogger. I always had the same look in a wild outfit.
And it worked.
It worked because I had like my pixie cut hair, and like people had stickers with my face on them, and I stuck them everywhere. And I know people like knew me for having that look. I mean, I've changed a lot since then, but in the early days of social media, like that's what I had this thing.
Yeah,
actually,
but I think it's not to take away talent from the guy. I mean, like I said, he built a company. It was made a lot of money, right? So as an entrepreneur, successful. Yeah. But he played off to be a heartthrob, a sex symbol, a designer, and all this stuff, right? Yeah, but that stuff was just completely egomaniacal. It has nothing to do with the talent component, right? So
there's an element. You've got to have a big ego in some respect to be that person.
That up,
to keep that up. Like, I don't
create that.
To create that, there's got to be you got to be pretty driven, pretty vain.
That doesn't happen without a big ego to create a big something of that magnitude. Jeez.
Yeah. And then so then you were at Nygård, and I mean, Holtz was obviously, I guess, you were selling through Holtz. Nygård must have been selling through Holtz, or no? It was more
Nygård
Bay,
was like
and
a lower
it was
price
a lower
point.
price point.
Yeah.
Okay, and did Holtz come knocking, or did you meet? How'd you get over to Holtz?
Holtz, I can't remember exactly. I just remember being at my parents' house, covering the Junos for something. I quit Nygård, and I remember and I don't recall how it came about, but I remember being on a phone interview at my parents' house with them. So I can't remember if I saw a posting for a job or someone had told me, chances are good someone said, oh, there's a role at Holtz and linked me to someone there. But that was a role that was a marketing manager. The Bloor Street store had seen a pretty significant decrease in revenue over the course of to last year. They were down significant numbers in the first 3 months. So a guy named James Watt came in from Nordstrom. He'd been at Nordstrom for years and years and years. Great guy, and he sort of reassembled the team, and we were able to do some really cool stuff and get some momentum again with the brand. And then Saks was the ones that kind of reached out through their HR department. I think we'd been doing a lot of interesting things at Holtz that kind of, as they were coming to town, and the conversations that I was having with Holtz, the team that was there then, didn't get the direction that it needed to go, and almost was oblivious to the fact that Saks is coming. Because I sat in a meeting, thank you, where I remember saying Saks is coming. What's the defense strategy, right? And it was crickets and tumbleweed. Oh, don't worry about that, right? And well,
good luck with that attitude.
Yeah, and that's really why I went. I had a great conversation. I went down to New York. I really liked the team there, and there was autonomy in the role.
Yeah,
right?
that's important.
So as opposed to me always getting in trouble and pushing, facing pushback all the time at Holtz at the time on things that were needed, and then every time we would just do it and execute it, everybody was like, "Oh, that was the
wow,
best."
that's amazing!"
Right? They were like, "We don't know the marketplace, so it's on you. Build it." And the team was I got to work with Kathleen Ruiz, who's a legend in the marketing kind of circles, and just. It was great. So then kind of went over and launched Saks in Canada from a marketing perspective and really built that marketing strategy.
Yeah, when you went into Holtz, do you go there as a customer and study that operation? What type of discovery do you do to figure out what the heck is wrong? When they say their numbers are down. Okay, so the start of that engagement, somebody comes to you and say, our numbers are down. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's retail, right? So there's so many factors that can go
right. That's
wrong.
what I'm thinking. So how do you
I think
figure out what is wrong?
For that, there was a whole bunch of things that had happened. There had been a new president that had brought in that had kind of really been tasked to rein back the dollars that had been spent, because the previous president, I think, was not our ROI focused, was really spending money to make buzz happen, right? Yep. So there wasn't a balance. So he came in and then he took the balance the other way, where all of a sudden Holtz was kind of not irrelevant, but it was just, there wasn't anything going on. It was the same old kind of stuff. So when I went in some ways it was funny because I was a little nervous because, I was at the end of my time in Nygård going down to New York on my own, paying my own way, going down to New York. I was meeting people, getting into the men's New York Fashion Week stuff, and now attending shows, and kind of had built this community. So I understood from a men's perspective where luxury was at, because I kind of started to really get into it. But women's, I was like, oh my God, and 80% of the brand then was women's. So I was like, okay, well, what would I do if I was going and auditing from a men's perspective? And that's really kind of how I went about it. But, it wasn't just marketing that we changed. James and Christopher and the team there were awesome, and they had staffing issues. And back then at Holtz, you could walk through Holtz and no one would say hi to you because you weren't on someone's book. Right? So staffing and customer service and right down to merchandise. What have they bought? Is the buy wrong? Are the buyers wrong because people aren't buying? So it was really a massive audit that in retail that there's so many areas. But for me, it was why is no one talking about this brand?
Right.
Right. So, because what can we do to make the conversation happen again, but not blow
the budget,
right?
Yeah.
And luckily there was some budget, but I basically leveraged all the people that I was meeting in New York.
Right.
So Blind Barber, Jeff and those guys, awesome guys. We were like, wouldn't it be cool to do they have speakeasies in all their barbershops, and they were great guys. I used to love seeing them all the time. And so I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we did a Blind Barber speakeasy barbershop, but in Holtz. So we found this little area in the back, hid it, and then like had a speakeasy barbershop for a week and kind of told a few people, and within like 2 hours they were like full up on haircuts for the week. And then we did a big party. And so
that's fun.
Basically we just started to leverage relationships that we had, and mostly that I had, and started building up more event related things, because there was some budget for events. And we're not talking, it wasn't events that like blew tons of money. It was get a booze sponsor, figure out
like
a cool way to bring
intimate
people
event.
in, more intimate, but they started to grow because the momentum started to work. So then it was really working more with the Holtz like corporate team, sort of on, you have an opportunity with Vogue Italia? Yeah, we want to do that. Oh, you guys are moving I can't remember what the shop was called, but it was like the cool, like advanced shop. Like, you're going to move that from Yorkdale, move it here to Bloor, and I'll help. Like, so we started like bringing in brands, and I would leverage people I knew and line them up with the buyers to do kind of like pop-ups. And so thankfully that was more tied to sort of like the people in the community that I was meeting down in New York, that I was able to leverage, and those good friends were now putting me on to other people, and that momentum was what was driving kind of what we were able to do at Holtz.
Yeah, well, it sounds like they sort of got punch drunk off of a whole generation of personal shopping, collected a big list of people, had relationships, sort of like Harrods does. Like, I think like 50% of Harrods' revenue comes from like 200 families or something.
Oh, yeah,
and,
for sure.
But as that generation dies, good luck. If that's your model. So you've got to now reach out to sort of this new generation and make them relevant.
Yeah. But you had like all these like staff that had been there forever.
Oh, real stuffy in the way staff.
So stuffy, like
30-year staff.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that James and Christopher, as sort of like the GM and AGM, did a really good job with, was sort of like exiting some of those people and kind of cracking the whip on others. But I think I had a friend who was actually with me at Nygård, who came over and was ended up had some free time and wanted to be an associate at Holtz. And she's like, how am I going to make this successful? I'm really intrigued. So she was on the second floor, the luxury, area. And I was like, every person that comes up that elevator, say hi to and smile. And within no time, she was like killing it.
Yeah, like top sales.
Because nobody else was doing that. They were leaning over in the far corner against the bar or whatever, the pay area, and we're like messing around on their phones and stuff, right? Because they just didn't care. But she was able to pick up every single person that was coming through just for that pair of shoes, or just for, but it's luxury.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's like $1,000 for shoes.
Yeah, and if you're doing that and then you have a good experience, they're going to want to come back and they're going to look for that person.
Totally.
Yeah, there's a famous retail sales book. I forget the writer, but I met him when I was on a trip in Connecticut, and it's called Hug Your Customer. Okay. And he's like he's kind of got like a massively successful retail store, high-end fashion in Connecticut. And the book's Hug Your Customer, and it's so true, because if you're going to just be, in the corner doing nothing, not saying hello, not establishing like a good rapport, good luck selling anything. And the thing is, maybe the older generation doesn't want to be approached. Yeah. But now you've got a bunch of people who like the whole thing is relationships in that respect.
It's all relationships now. All relationships.
And then you went over to Saks, and that was relatively recently, like within the last 5 years or so.
Probably 6 years ago now. Yeah.
And you immediately brought a lot of, a tasteful edge to Saks in a good way. Yeah. And that was fantastic, because I watched you do that rollout, and it was awesome. Like, I remember when I did that Gucci Ghost event, and that was great. And you brought just a lot of that newer, edgier designer creativity, both in the brands and yourself, to that company, which was really cool to see in Toronto.
It was fun, but like I'm really lucky that and thankful to that organization, because like I'm not a poster boy for, like, I would be more of a poster boy now than it would have been even 6 years ago.
Oh, yes. They were ahead of their time, even taking a shot on you.
I kind of, and I understand that. And, I'm really thankful, because they not only took that chance, but gave me autonomy, right? Like, was like, we expect you to know this community, so do stuff that's going to resonate there. And we did some really wicked stuff, like Gucci Ghost, super fun way to celebrate Canada 150. Kate Moss, like Cindy Crawford, Chantal Martin was a friend of mine from New York and was able to bring her in for like to do a kickoff event. Like from an event perspective, we did some really, really great things. And there was like some good budget there because we had opening budget that lasted for, X amount of time. We needed to introduce the city to unique things because they'd bought in unique ways. So fragrances was not an area that like had been, they identified like jewelry, high-end jewelry and like fragrances as two areas they were going to come heavy in because they didn't feel that Holtz had strength there, right? And Nordstrom was not playing at that same level. So, we did some really cool things with like fragrances and in the high-end jewelry and but once again, a lot of it, we Gurpreet and I were laughing. Gurpreet worked with me. She's awesome. Like we were laughing because in the end, when we kind of looked at the list of stuff that we did, 90% of it was our connections.
Yeah.
Right. So they benefited because most of the stuff that we did and came up with was using my network.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Not even having to bug the corporate team in New York to get us alignments on things. Right. So it was cool,
awesome.
like that it worked out that way and momentum built and like the brand was killing it when like we all decided to go our separate ways. Like Sharad went to Nobis and Gurpreet went to the bank, and I went and sort of was consulting and doing some stuff with ET Canada. Like it was in kind of good hands, but I was sitting in a lot of meetings where it was a whole lot of, we know how to run this, like the whole thinking changed.
Right.
It was no longer, this is Canada, so it's going to be unique and a little bit different. It was, we know how to run these stores, so we're going to run them the way we want to do it, right? And I didn't feel like that was going to work very well. And like the Eden Center store was the number 3 company door in year 1.
Oh,
wow.
Right. So
damn.
like it had been a success and they like to brag about that success. But then when it came time to like listening to us, they kind of stopped because of, I'm sure there's like profit margins and there's all these other things that are involved in that. So I get it from a business perspective, but unfortunately now it's irrelevant again.
Well, it seems like they came out of the gate right, like strong.
Yeah, totally.
And then just when they started to get cruise control on, like just when the acceleration stopped, they put the cruise control on and they just basically amalgamated it into the rest of the thinking.
Yeah. I'm biased, but I agree. Like I think we came out of the gate hot and heavy, but everybody knew Saks was the place to go, and Holtz got hit hard in that beginning.
Yeah, so much so that I think they completely responded by renovating the whole downstairs and put their fragrances downstairs.
They'd actually always been like talking about that reno and been
okay, because it was just timely happening right around then.
But they responded by like kind of waiting it out.
Yeah.
Right? Because the hot and heavy is going to end up slowing down, but the problem is that there was never anything. When we kind of left, I'm not saying this because we were involved. There's not been one clever thing that I've seen them do from a marketing perspective. Like, there isn't. The events, they're non-existent. Now, COVID played into that and stuff, but even that time period where we had just kind of left, there wasn't anything going on. And I know the team that went in there after because I kind of helped get them hired. Yeah. I chose them. They were even frustrated because they were like, it's like our way or the highway kind of thinking, and anything we bring to the table, there's now no money and this, that, the other. So, I would not be surprised if Saks pulls out of Canada at some point.
Wow.
It was supposed to be 5 doors. Now there's 3, right? So like all the stuff that I was told when I first was in the meetings with them didn't end up coming to fruition anyway.
And did Nordstrom come in after them?
Same time. Yeah. Nordstrom opened, I think Nordstrom opened first.
Yeah. Okay. In Yorkdale.
No, I think that maybe Eden Center. I think it was Eden Center first. I might be wrong. I can't remember, but I think they beat us. They came first to Vancouver. So Nordstrom was in Vancouver first.
Okay.
And we were the first to market in Toronto.
Okay.
Saks is the first to market here, and then Nordstrom opened after we did.
And tell me a bit about what you're doing now.
Now, oh man. Now I totally switched gears. So I went from kind of that fashion retail space. I kind of was doing this like fun thing with ET Canada called Style Scout, which was fun, and consulting, and then I ran into a friend, Chris Palling, great guy, who had just accepted a VP of marketing or VP role for North America for Louis XIII Cognac. And I can't remember how we ran into each other at an event. He was kind of stuck at it doing something there because someone hadn't shown up, like one of those sort of things.
Yeah.
And we kind of connected again and had some great conversations. And he was like, I really need someone in this role here in Canada to help kind of build the brand, build the private client side. It's kind of a great role because we're really just putting the brand on the map. It has its own kind of like areas that we focus on. Our events are obviously not big at $4,300 a decanter. Mm-hmm. You're not trying to go mass market, big brand buzz. You're just, ROI is important. So a lot of the stuff is smaller, more niche category, and just sort of like building the business in Canada. We've been, we have a great team. Chenway's out in Vancouver, Kellen's in Vancouver. I'm out here. And we've been able to really, push it, and we've had, I think, the last 2 years have been the top 2 years that the brand's ever had in Canada. So it's
that's amazing.
It's really cool, and it's luxury. I mean, it's like it flies in a different category. It's a spirit, but if you think about the brand, Remy Martin's been around for longer than Hermes, and spirits are consumed through all things. So it kind of makes us in a way an arbiter of all things luxury, which is cool. So I really love the story, and product's incredible, and it really aligns well with all the stuff, the interest categories and kind of my roles coming from like the luxury kind of fashion retail space.
And where is their headquarters? In France?
Paris, yeah.
In Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And how many different SKUs do they have?
Well, Remy
like
Cointreau as a group is like...
No, like the cognac, the Louis cognac.
Well, Louis just is the one. Well, that's not true. So, I mean, there's different formats, size formats. Right?
Okay.
So you've got like the 700 ml decanter, and then you've got like you can buy a 1.5 liter, a 3 liter. There's a few 6 liters in the world, which are crazy. I just saw one for the first time about 6 months ago. And then you've got some special releases. So you get like a Black Pearl, which anyone that's kind of a cognac aficionado, they know, they always ask that. What's a Black Pearl? It's craziest looking, coolest looking product.
You must have to really study
ones.
Up on your...
Yeah, man, because I didn't really drink cognac before. It was never my drink of choice, and now I hardly drink at all, but when I do drink, I only drink Louis. So.
Yeah.
I mean, it's turned me into the most bougie guy ever.
Yeah. That's great, though.
Yeah,
especially, like, knowing your whole story. Like, one thing I wrote down was that we were little nightmare guys. Is like you said that when you showed up in Whistler, and now you're, like, drinking Louis, and it's like, it's like... it's a really cool...
I have a funny story with the Louis thing in Whistler. The first time I ever had Louis, we joke as a group of guys, like, and like, you'll never forget the first time you had Louis, and it's true. It's one of the coolest things that you can pour for someone because they'll always remember that they had it with you. Yeah. First time I had it, I was in Whistler. My palate was Molson Canadian... and Cuervo shots as a bartender. That's all, like, really, and whatever else I'd screwed up to drink that night. So I get invited up by the owner of the bar, and he's got a couple clients in town. So we go to this restaurant, Araxi. I even remember the restaurant where we're at. We have dinner. It's a great dinner. They're kind of weird. At the end of dinner, the guy says, I'm going to order us around a Louis XIII. And I'm like, no idea what that is, right? Comes out to the table, and he makes a point of kind of pointing out the price. Yeah. And I want to say it was $300 even then. This is going back like 20-something years ago. And I remember like zero palate. Right. Taking it back, shooting it back. Right. Because not having any idea. Not sipping it. Didn't come in a snifter, right? Like no idea. Pounded it back and just remember thinking to myself, what in the world was that? Right? Cool. Just had a $300 shot in my mind, right? But so it's bizarre that the crazy thing is I remember who I was with. I remember where I was. I remember the name of it.
The special mention.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, and now I work with it, but now I understand just how important it is and how luxury it is and how special it is and why it's the price it is. And so it's bizarre because I was the guy that had the experience where I was like, what in the... You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of a bizarre... That's the... It all kind of... the circle.
The 360.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, close the loop on that one, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. It's so cool to learn more about you because, I mean, we see each other in passing, but we
totally,
get the time to really, explore and learn so much about your history, because it's fascinating. Because what you were ultimately saying when you said not stumble through, but sort of life pinballs you into almost the fate of your direction. Yeah, it's definitely worked out tremendously well. It
has. I'm the first to admit that I've been like hugely blessed, man. Like I never set goals. Right, like I never was someone that set a goal. I just kind of like people have been very good to me, and have taken chances on me all the way up. Mm-hmm. And it's been fantastic. But I never set goals. I just always was obsessed with like progression. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, it didn't matter where I was going and what I was doing. Like as long as I felt that I was moving in the right direction and progressing, then I was cool. And I'm really thankful, because it's. Yeah, I kind of have like stumbled out of the dark woods of my own, right? And have like been.
What else do you attribute it to in yourself? What other qualities would you say you'd pat on the back for getting you here?
I'm such a mix of my mom and dad. So my mom is the most outgoing like human ever. So she'll come to Toronto, she'll be on an elevator, and she's the one that's like starting conversations, and I'm feeling awkward and like people looking around. But by the end of it, everyone in the elevator like loves my mom. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's a great quality.
Yeah. And so I have a real like extroverted side to me. Mm-hmm. I can turn that on, no problem. Yeah. Right. So I can lean heavily on that, but I'm also super introverted. So I can't wait to get home half the time from my own events, right? Yeah. It's like this weird thing.
I understand that a lot.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are like that. But so I'd say that, that ability, that's like a shout out, thanks mom kind of thing. I think I try and be as good to people as I can. Like I'm interested in, I like actually genuinely love meeting people and getting to know people and whatnot. So I think that has always helped. And
one thing I've definitely noticed about you is no matter how much is going on in an event or whatever, you're always present with the person you're talking to. You do a very good job. You do a good job at it, because I've been with you at events for Saks, events for Louis, and at no point did I feel like I was having a conversation with somebody who was like, Oh,
I appreciate that.
Steph, you've done a phenomenal job at that.
No, I appreciate that. So I think like those things are good. And I think I always sort of say like, I really followed pop culture for a long time, and I really kind of nerded out on the interests that I had. Mm-hmm. And that stuff like did me right, just because I got lucky to go in that fashion direction and stuff. And
you went deep.
I was able to, and that's always informed the decisions that I made, and was able to kind of make things relevant, right? So I'd say that stuff. But like, if you had told this punk ass kid from Winnipeg that was like even 19 years old and not sure what he's going to do with his life after hockey was done, that I'd be doing the stuff that I do now, or have been able to do the stuff, or like I wouldn't have believed it, right? So I've been pretty lucky, and there's a hand somewhere that's guide me, and I believe that 100%.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
Lots of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to our 10th episode with Shayne Stephens. Check out his great style on Instagram at Shayne Stephens.
You can watch Cast of Creators on YouTube, listen on your favorite podcast platform, or visit castofcreators.com.
And don't forget to follow and subscribe.